Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all well. So in this video we are going to be reviewing the Green Lantern. Now it's a really funny one with the Green Lantern, as the first third of this movie is just absolutely atrocious. The characters are really annoying, the visuals are really bad, and just the world of the Green Lantern is just not particularly engaging. However, after you've got past the horrendous first act of the movie, then the rest of the film isn't actually that bad. So for example, the old friend rivalry is really believable, the romance with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is believable, the Green Lantern corpse is really cool as well, the end of the world threat is pretty decent too, and the twist right at the end was really good as well. So it's just such a shame that this movie was received so badly as a sequel, and a third film, which is what they were planning to do, could have been so much better. So it's a real shame, but I'm going to break down everything about this film in this movie review. So like I just said, the start of this movie is just absolutely horrendous. You've got this one scene that you're basically watching twice and was just really ineffectively shown in the movie. It would have been more effective if they had reduced the scene and just shown it in a couple of flashbacks, but instead you've got this really dull and awkward scene which shows Hal Jordan as a child witnessing the death of his father in an unfortunate plane accident that has led him to be really arrogant and really fearful. And like I said before, it would have just been so much more impactful and more effective if they had just reduced the scene and just shown it in a couple of flashbacks. But instead you get this really elongated and really boring sequence that just started the movie off in a really bad way. Now concurrently to this, we have the escape of a malevolent being called Parallax on a mission to kill alien Abin Sur, who was the guy that imprisoned Parallax in a deserted planet called Riot years ago. I know this all sounds super far-fetched, but surprisingly, the Green Lantern aspects of the film are actually pretty decent. Now let's go back to Abin Sur. Now before he passes away, he passes on his ring and his lantern to his next successor, who happens to be Hal Jordan, played by Ryan Reynolds. Hal Jordan then begins to learn the way of the Green Lanterns, gets trained up by the other Green Lantern members, and begins to fall in love with his childhood lover, Carol Ferris, played by Blake Lively. At the same time as this, his other childhood rival, Hector Hammond, begins to learn the opposite power of Hal Jordan's power of the will, which is the power of fear, by the malevolent being Parallax. The movie then begins to become the journey of Hal Jordan in terms of proving himself to the other Green Lantern Corps members and beginning to stop the threat of both Hector Hammond and Parallax. So as far as the storyline goes, it definitely started off in a very bad way, but then became pretty endearing and was really powerful in terms of the power of the will versus the power of fear, and kind of setting up all of these different characters, setting up all of these different worlds. So got pretty engaging. It's just such a shame that the movie was received so badly, as it would have been really interesting to see where this storyline would have gone in the second and third installments, because the characters and actors in this film were pretty decent. Speaking of which, let's go through the actors and the characters now. So I feel like the actors that they selected for this film were pretty decent, really good A-list celebrities that they chose for the different characters, and their performances for the most part were decent. Some were absolutely dreadful and some definitely had some awful moments in there, but for the most part, decent actors and decent characters. So let's go through them one by one. So first up we have Ryan Reynolds, who plays Hal Jordan, and in the beginning at least, this is a very douchey and arrogant character that just has some absolutely awful one-liners in this movie. That being said though, I don't think it warranted all of the hate that this character and actor received, as the suit definitely could have been better and the mask was an absolute joke, but I just feel like the character and the portrayal definitely improved as the film went on. Next, let's review Blake Lively, who plays Carol Ferris. Now Blake Lively needs to play a superhero already on the big screen, and this franchise could have been the one to bring Blake Lively into a superhero role had the franchise continued, as the character would have later on become Star Sapphire. In terms of her performance, it was pretty decent. The plane sequences in the beginning were just absolutely awful, absolutely cringe, like I keep saying. But again, like the Ryan Reynolds Hal Jordan character, this character did improve and did get better over time. Next we have Peter Sarsgaard, who played Hector Hammond, who was the rival to Hal Jordan's character. And I really like this character actually, as he was the villain in the film, and his character growth and character journey was really, really believable. You know, society kind of rejects him, his father kind of rejects him, and everyone is just kind of making this character just crumble, and is just making him really bitter and just really twisted. And then when he gets the opportunity to kind of exact his revenge, then he kind of takes advantage of it and then just becomes a bit of a twisted, psychotic, menacing villain. So I just really liked how this film really had a good story and good background and character growth and character journey for the villain. And as we know, a lot of superhero movies don't really get the villain done properly. So I just feel like the human side of this character and how he became kind of like the evil villain was done really, really well. Next up we had Mark Strong as the arrogant Sinestro, and equally with him, I just feel like he gave a really believable performance in terms of playing this kind of leader of the Green Lantern Corps, kind of somebody who doesn't really rate Hal Jordan at all and is just very full of himself, and you could really see his path to the dark side in terms of him trying to stop Parallax, but then kind of this newbie who isn't really that great, Hal Jordan, is able to stop Parallax, which was really interesting in terms of being able to see the somewhat degradation of this Sinestro character. So that was a really cool performance as well. And in terms of Parallax, he was kind of like this big malevolent kind of being in the background, but at the end of the day, his performance was just a floating head. So that was a really disappointing kind of big villain. You know, the human villain, like I said before, with Hector Hammond was decent, but the bigger villain with Parallax was pretty disappointing. And it was also really nice to see Amanda Waller's character in this film as well. Obviously that character got rebooted again with the Suicide Squad, but otherwise it was really nice to kind of see that character in this movie as well. So, you know, overall, like I said before, you know, the characters and actors were decent. Some of the performances were pretty awful and took a while to get used to, but overall, the characters and actors were pretty decent in this movie. In terms of the visuals for this movie, for the most part, unfortunately, they are pretty poor and really underwhelming. I'd say pretty much 75% of this movie, the visuals are not that great. But that being said, you know, the other 25% it is acceptable, and you can kind of believe all of the things that you're kind of seeing and the world that they're kind of creating. It's a shame that this wasn't better because, you know, at the end of the day, this movie was released in 2011 and the visuals really should have been and could have been so much better than they were. But, you know, for the most part, you can kind of just about get behind them and kind of believe the world that they're creating in this movie. In terms of comparisons, I do feel like this movie was probably overly criticised. It's definitely not the best, but equally it's definitely not the worst either. I'd say it's a lot better than, you know, The Hulk, which is a funny one actually, as, you know, right at the end of The Hulk, when you kind of see the formation of the Abomination character, that was very similar to the Hector Hammond character. So I wonder if they kind of, you know, pulled a couple of aspects of The Hulk and kind of inserted them in the Green Lantern film. But, you know, like I said, definitely not the worst, but equally definitely not the worst either. Such a shame that this movie kind of did get such a bad reception, as I feel like it could have been given another go, and it would have been interesting to see where they would have gone next with this world that they were creating for the Green Lantern. Overall, I do feel like the Green Lantern movie was probably overly criticised. It's a shame that they're not going to get a sequel, and, you know, the starting of the movie was pretty horrendous, but it did improve after a while, and I really liked the kind of themes that they had in terms of will versus fear, and how, you know, how the power of the will can lead to a person becoming really arrogant, but equally ignoring their fears is not great either, and you can use the power of your fears to kind of become an even more powerful person, and kind of overcoming your fears is how you get strength. So, you know, all of these different themes with will and fear and all of these really cool aspects of the film were pretty decent. It's such a shame that, like I said before, that we're not getting a sequel, as it would have been nice to kind of see where this world characters would have gone down, and hopefully better visuals had there been a second and third one. But never mind, you know, For all of the reasons that I've stated above, I'm going to give the Green Lantern film a solid 4.5 out of 10. I'd love to hear what you think, so please let me know in the comment section below. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.